The morning sun had barely risen over Seoul when Dr. Jaiho Park's computer started beeping. He had been asleep at his desk again, surrounded by empty coffee cups and scattered papers. The beeping grew louder, and Jiho lifted his head, his eyes still heavy with sleep. "Not now," he mumbled, reaching for his coffee. But when he looked at his computer screen, his tiredness vanished instantly. The data from the underground sensor array was showing something impossible. Jaiho grabbed his phone and called his research partner. "Hey Yun, you need to see this right now," he said, his voice shaking with excitement. Dr. Hye-Yun Kim was already on her way to the lab, as she usually arrived early. 10 minutes later, Hye-Yun rushed into the lab. Her long black coat was still wet from the morning rain. "What did you find?" she asked, pulling up a chair next to Jaiho. "Look at these energy readings," Jaiho said, pointing to the screen. "They're coming from 200 meters below the ground, near the old temple site." The screen showed patterns of energy that looked like waves, but they weren't like anything they had seen before. Hye-Yun leaned closer to the screen. "These patterns, they're similar to our theoretical models of the Big Bang," she said quietly. "But that's impossible." Within hours, they had assembled a small team and gotten permission to dig at the site. The university had been studying this area for months, looking for geological formations, but they had found nothing unusual until now. The dig site was muddy from the rain, and the team worked carefully. They'd brought in special equipment to scan deeper into the ground. By sunset, their machines hit something solid. It wasn't rock or metal. It was something else. "Stop the machines," Jaiho called out. The team switched to hand tools, working slowly and carefully. As they cleared away the dirt, they found a smooth, dark surface that seemed to absorb light. It was perfectly round, about the size of a car tire. Hye-Yun ran her scanner over the object. "The energy readings are stronger now," she said. "And look at this. It's maintaining a constant temperature despite being underground for who knows how long." As they cleaned more dirt away, they found strange markings on the object's surface. They weren't any known language or symbols. The markings seemed to shift and change when viewed from different angles, like oil on water. "This isn't human technology," Jaiho said, stating what they were all thinking. "The material, the energy signature, these markings, nothing like this exists on Earth." Hye-Yun nodded, taking photos and measurements. "And it's old," she added. "The surrounding soil layers suggest it's been here for at least 10,000 years. Just then, one of the team members called out. He had found a small depression on the object's surface, about the size of a hand. Before anyone could stop him, he reached out to touch it. The object hummed to life. Light began to pulse through the strange markings, and the energy readings on their instruments went wild. Above them, the evening sky seemed to ripple, like waves on a pond. "Everyone, step back," Jaiho ordered, but he couldn't take his eyes off the object. The markings were now projecting into the air, forming complex three-dimensional patterns that rotated slowly. Hye-Yun was recording everything on her tablet. "Jaiho," she said softly, "these patterns, they're showing the same mathematical sequences we used to describe the early universe. This isn't just alien technology. This is something much bigger." As night fell over Seoul, the team worked under bright lights to secure the site. News would spread soon, and they needed to protect their discovery. Whatever this object was, it would change everything they thought they knew about the universe, and humanity's place in it. Jaiho looked at the glowing patterns floating in the air and felt a mixture of excitement and fear. They had found something incredible, but he couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning. Somewhere in the back of his mind, a small voice whispered that maybe some discoveries were meant to stay buried. 3 days after the discovery, Dr. Hye-Yun Kim sat in her office, staring at her computer screen. Her eyes were red from lack of sleep. The floating patterns from the artifact had been recorded, but no one could understand them. Until now. "Jaiho," she called out, her voice echoing down the empty hallway. It was past midnight, but she knew he would still be in the building. "I found something." Dr. Jaiho Park rushed into her office, holding a half-eaten sandwich. "What is it?" he asked, pulling up a chair beside her desk. "Look at these patterns," Heyun said, pointing to her screen. "They're not random. They're numbers, coordinates." She pulled up a map on another screen. "These numbers point to specific places around the world." Jaiho dropped his sandwich. "Are you sure?" "Yes. I ran the calculations 20 times. Heyun showed him her work. "There are 5 more locations: Russia, Egypt, Brazil, Australia, and Canada." They needed help to understand the rest of the message. The next morning, they called Dr. Taiwan Lee, the best cryptographer in South Korea. He arrived at their lab wearing a wrinkled suit, carrying a laptop bag. "Show me everything," Taiwan said, sitting down at their main computer. He worked for hours, typing quickly and muttering to himself. The others watched and waited. Finally, Taiwan sat back in his chair. "This isn't just coordinates," he said. "There's a message hidden in the mathematical sequence. It's like a puzzle, but the pieces are numbers." Heyun brought him a cup of coffee. "Can you decode it?" "Parts of it," Taiwan replied. "It keeps talking about the beginning and the first light. But the most interesting part is this." He pointed to a series of numbers on his screen. "These numbers describe the exact moment of the Big Bang." "That's impossible," Jaiho said. "We've never been able to calculate that precisely." "Whoever left this artifact could," Taiwan said. "And there's more. Each location in the coordinates seems to hold a piece of the complete message. We need to find the other artifacts to understand it all." Just then, the lights in the lab flickered. The artifact, which they had moved to a secure room next door, began humming again. The 3 scientists rushed to check on it. The artifact's surface was glowing brighter than before. New patterns appeared, showing what looked like a map of the stars. But the star positions were wrong. They showed the sky as it would have looked thousands of years ago. "It's not just telling us where to look," Heyun said excitedly. "It's telling us when these artifacts were placed on Earth. This is a message from the past." As they watched, the star map changed, showing different time periods. The patterns moved faster and faster until they suddenly stopped. The room fell silent. "We need to find the other artifacts," Jaiho said firmly. "Whatever this message is, it's too important to ignore." Taiwan nodded in agreement. "But we should be careful. If these artifacts are as old as we think, other people might have found them before us, and they might not want us to find the rest." Heyun was already making plans. "I'll contact research centers near the other locations. We'll need their help to search." She paused, looking at her colleagues. "But maybe we should keep the real reason for our search quiet for now." Jaiho understood her concern. News of their discovery had already spread through the scientific community. Strange emails and phone calls had started coming in. Some people seemed very interested in their work, too interested. As the 3 scientists made their plans, none of them noticed the small drone hovering outside their window, its camera recording everything. In a sleek office building across Seoul, a man named Do Hyun Kwon watched their conversation on his computer screen, his face expressionless. He picked up his phone and dialed a number. "They found the message," he said quietly. "Start making arrangements. We need to reach the other artifacts first." Dr. Yoon-hee Kang stood at the edge of the Australian desert, checking her equipment one last time. The sun was rising, turning the sky orange. Behind her, Jaiho and Heyun were setting up their scanning devices. They had been traveling for 2 weeks, following the coordinates from the first artifact. "The energy readings are similar to what we found in Seoul," Yoon-hee said, looking at her tablet. She was an astrophysicist who had joined their team after seeing the star maps. "The signal is coming from that direction." She pointed toward a group of large rocks. Professor Sang-min Choi, their archaeology expert, walked up to examine the rocks. "These formations aren't natural," he said, running his hand over the smooth surface. "Someone shaped these rocks a long time ago." The team had already found two more artifacts. The first was deep in a Russian forest, hidden in an ancient cave. The second was underwater, off the coast of Brazil. Each artifact had shown them new pieces of the message, but they still didn't understand it all. "Let's start digging," Jaiho said. He looked tired but determined. They all were tired. Finding these artifacts wasn't easy, and they weren't the only ones looking. As they worked, Heyun kept watch. They had learned to be careful after what happened in Russia. Do-hyun's people had almost caught them there. They had barely escaped with the artifact. By midday, their machines hit something solid. Everyone gathered around as Sang-min carefully cleared away the dirt. Like the others, this artifact was round and dark, with the same strange markings. "Stand back," Yoon-hee warned. She had studied how the artifacts activated. "We need to record everything." Heyun set up their cameras while Jaiho prepared the scanning equipment. When everything was ready, Sang-min pressed his hand against the surface depression. The artifact hummed to life, but this time was different. Instead of showing star maps, it projected what looked like a giant machine. The image rotated slowly in the air, showing different parts and how they fit together. "It's a blueprint," Heyun said excitedly. "The artifacts. They're not just messages. They're parts of something bigger." Yoon-hee studied the projection carefully. These energy signatures, they match theories about the creation of the universe. Whatever this machine is, it has something to do with the Big Bang. Suddenly, their radios crackled with static. Sang-min, who was keeping watch, called out, "We have company. 3 helicopters coming this way. Pack everything up," Jaiho ordered, quickly. They had prepared for this, while Heyun and Yoon-hee carefully packed the artifact into a special case. The others erased all signs of their dig. They could hear the helicopters getting closer. "This way," Sang-min called. He led them to a hidden vehicle they had parked nearby. They drove away just as the helicopters appeared over the rocks. "Do-hyun is getting better at tracking us," Heyun said, looking back at the helicopters growing smaller in the distance. "But we're getting better at escaping," Jaiho replied. He took out his satellite phone. "I'll contact our team in Egypt. They need to be ready. That's where we'll find the next piece." As they drove across the desert, Yoon-hee studied the data from the new artifact. "Each piece we find tells us more," she said. "This isn't just about understanding the Big Bang. I think someone left these artifacts to show us how to create a universe." The car fell silent as everyone thought about what that meant. The sun was setting now, painting the desert sky in deep reds and purples. Somewhere out there, 2 more artifacts were waiting to be found. And with Do-hyun's people getting closer, they were running out of time to find them first. The Egyptian sun was setting when Do-hyun Kwon walked into the ancient temple. His expensive suit looked out of place among the stone columns. 2 men in black uniforms followed him, carrying metal cases. "They were here," Do-hyun said, touching the wall where fresh marks showed something had been removed. "But we were too late again." His phone rang. "Sir," a voice said, "we found something you need to see." In the temple's lower chamber, his team had uncovered a hidden room. Strange equipment filled the space. Computers, sensors, and cameras. On a desk sat a familiar laptop. "Dr. Park's computer," Do-hyun said, picking it up. They left in a hurry. The laptop contained files about the artifacts. Do-hyun read through them carefully. What he saw made him frown. "They don't understand how dangerous this is," he said quietly. Meanwhile, in a small hotel room across the city, Jaiho was looking at the Egyptian artifact they had just recovered. Heyun sat beside him, typing notes on her tablet. "This one is different," she said. "Look at how the patterns move." Before Jaiho could respond, their room's lights went out. Then their phones lost signal. Through the window, they saw other buildings losing power too. "The artifact," Yoon-hee said from across the room. "It's causing this." The round object was glowing brighter than any of the others had. Its surface patterns were moving faster, creating new shapes in the air. Above the city, the sky began to change. It's affecting the atmosphere, He explained, checking her instruments. The energy output is massive. Sang-min rushed into the room. We need to leave, he said. Do-hyun's people are in the building. They quickly packed their equipment, but the artifact wouldn't stop glowing. As they carried it down the emergency stairs, its energy grew stronger. Cars outside stopped working. Birds flew in confused circles. Over here, Ta-won called. He had been waiting with their escape vehicle, an old truck that had no electronic parts to fail. As they drove through the darkened city, Hye-yun studied the artifact. Each one we find is more powerful than the last, she said. They're not just parts of a machine. They're like keys, unlocking something bigger. Suddenly, a black helicopter appeared above them, its searchlight cutting through the darkness. More vehicles appeared behind them, their headlights bright in the dark city. Hold on, Ta-won shouted, turning the truck onto a narrow side street. The artifact's glow pulsed brighter with each turn. In the sky, strange lights began to appear. People came out of their houses, pointing up at the display. We can't let them catch us, Jae-ho said. Not now. We're too close to understanding what these artifacts are for. Hye-yun looked back at their pursuers. Do-hyun thinks he's protecting the world by stopping us, she said. But he's wrong. These artifacts, they're meant to help us grow, to show us something important. The truck raced through the empty streets as the sky continued to change above them. None of them knew it yet, but this chase was about to lead them to something even more incredible than what they had already found. In his command center, Do-hyun watched the strange lights in the sky. His experts were reporting similar phenomena around the world, centered on places where artifacts had been found. He picked up his phone and made a call. Activate all teams, he ordered. Whatever they're planning to do with these artifacts, we have to stop them. The risk is too great. The Canadian research station was surrounded by snow. Inside, 5 artifacts sat in a circle on a special table. Jae-ho and his team had finally found all of them. Each one glowed softly, creating patterns that danced in the air above them. The last piece changes everything, Hye-yun said, looking at her computer screen. She had been studying the data from the newest artifact for hours. These aren't just ancient messages, they're instructions. Yoon-hee walked around the table, checking readings from each artifact. Instructions for what? For building a machine, Ta-won answered. He pointed to the patterns above them. When you put all the messages together, they show us how to build a device that can create a tiny universe. The room went quiet. Outside, the northern lights shimmered in the dark sky, but they weren't natural anymore. Since they had brought all the artifacts together, strange lights had appeared all over the world. Sang-min brought up an old image on the main screen. Look at these cave paintings we found near the Russian artifact, he said. They show the same patterns we're seeing now. Someone left these artifacts here thousands of years ago, waiting for us to find them. But why? Jae-ho asked, touching one of the artifacts gently. Why give us this knowledge? As if answering his question, all 5 artifacts suddenly glowed brighter. The patterns above them changed, forming new shapes. They watched as the shapes became clear images, scenes from another world. It's a message, Hye-yun said softly, from the people who made these artifacts. The images showed strange beings creating their own universe. They had built a massive machine, similar to the one shown in the artifact blueprints, but something had gone wrong. Their universe was dying, and they needed to preserve their knowledge. They didn't just leave us instructions, Yoon-hee realized. They left us their legacy. They wanted someone to continue their work. Just then, the station's alarms went off. On the security screens, they saw helicopters landing outside. Do-hyun had found them. We need more time, Jae-ho said, looking at the artifacts. We're so close to understanding everything. The artifacts pulsed again, and new information appeared in the air. These weren't just patterns anymore. They were clear technical diagrams showing exactly how the device worked. "It's beautiful," Heyun whispered. "The device doesn't just create a universe. It creates a window to see the moment of creation itself. We could watch the Big Bang happen." They heard footsteps in the hallway outside. Do-hyun's people were inside the building. "Download everything," Jai-ho ordered. "All the data, all the measurements. We can't let this knowledge be lost." As they worked quickly to save the information, the artifacts began to change. Their surfaces became transparent, revealing complex machinery inside. Each one was part of a larger device, waiting to be assembled. "They're not just showing us how to build it," Ta-won said in amazement. "They gave us the parts. We just need to put them together." The door burst open. Do-hyun walked in, followed by his security team. But when he saw the artifacts and the display above them, he stopped. For the first time, he looked uncertain. "You need to see this," Jai-ho said to him. "What these artifacts show us, it's not a weapon or a threat. It's a gift. The greatest gift any civilization has ever received." Do-hyun walked slowly around the table of glowing artifacts. His security team stood by the door, waiting for orders. The room was silent except for the soft hum of the ancient devices. "Show me everything," Do-hyun said finally. His voice was different now, less commanding, more curious. For the next hour, Jai-ho and Heyun explained what they had learned. They showed him the messages, the blueprints, and the history of the civilization that had created the artifacts. Yoon-hee explained how the device would work, while Ta-won translated the final pieces of the alien language. "All this time," Do-hyun said, "I thought you were going to destroy everything. I thought the artifacts were weapons." "Not weapons," Sang-min replied. "Tools for understanding. The people who made these wanted to help us grow." The artifacts continued to glow, their patterns now forming a complete set of instructions in the air above them. The combined light made the room look like it was underwater, with waves of color moving across the walls. "We can build it," Heyun said, pointing to her calculations. "The device would be small, about the size of a car. But its power—" She paused, looking for simple words to explain it. "Its power would be enormous." "And dangerous?" Do-hyun asked. Jai-ho nodded. "Yes, like all powerful knowledge, it could be dangerous if used wrongly. That's why they left it in pieces, protected. They wanted us to find all the parts and understand everything before we could use it." Suddenly, all their phones started beeping. Yoon-hee checked hers first. "The energy patterns from the artifacts," she said. "They're affecting satellites now. Soon everyone on Earth will know something is happening." They all knew what this meant. They had to make a decision quickly. "If we build this device," Do-hyun said slowly, "we could see the beginning of everything. We could answer questions humans have asked since we first looked at the stars." He turned to Jai-ho. "But if something goes wrong?" "Then we risk everything," Jai-ho finished. "That's why we need your help." Heyun stepped forward. "The ancient civilization didn't just leave us the parts. They left us warnings too. Rules to follow. We need to build the device exactly as they showed us." Outside, the strange lights in the sky grew brighter. The artifacts seemed to respond, their glow pulsing in time with the lights above. "We don't have much time," Ta-won said, checking his readings. "The artifacts are becoming more active. They want to be assembled." Do-hyun looked at each person in the room. Then he made a decision. He took out his phone and made a call. "This is Do-hyun," he said. "Tell all teams to stand down. We're going to help them build it." He turned to Jai-ho. "But we do this carefully, following every instruction exactly." Jai-ho nodded. "Together then." "Together," Do-hyun agreed. "But first, we need to move everything to a safer location. My organization has a secure facility in the mountains. We can build it there, away from populated areas." As they began packing up the artifacts, Heian noticed something new in the patterns above. The images showed scenes of different universes being born, each one unique and beautiful. "They're showing us possibilities," she said softly. "All the different ways a universe can begin." The team worked through the night, carefully packing each artifact. They all knew that soon they would either make the greatest discovery in human history or learn why some knowledge was meant to stay hidden. The mountain facility was built deep inside solid rock. In the main chamber, Jeho and his team worked carefully to assemble the device. They had spent 2 weeks studying every detail of the instructions before starting. "The final piece is ready," Heian said, holding up the last artifact. Its surface had changed, becoming crystal clear like glass. Inside, complex machinery moved in patterns they were only beginning to understand. Do-hyun watched from the observation room above. His organization had provided everything they needed: power systems, safety equipment, and the strongest computers available. On the screens around him, scientists from around the world waited to see what would happen. "All safety checks are complete," Yoon-hee reported. She had designed special sensors to monitor everything about the device. "Power systems are stable." Sang-min finished checking the ancient symbols carved into each piece. "The artifacts are aligned correctly," he said, "just like in the instructions." Taiwan sat at the main computer, watching data flow across his screens. "The translation is confirmed," he said. "We understand exactly what they want us to do." Jeho looked at each member of his team, then at Do-hyun. Everyone nodded. It was time. "Starting assembly sequence," Heian announced. She placed the final artifact into position. The pieces began to move on their own, fitting together like they were meant to be one machine. Bright light filled the chamber as the device took its final shape. It was beautiful, a perfect sphere made of what looked like flowing metal and crystal. Inside, they could see energy moving like tiny stars being born. "Power levels are rising," Yoon-hee called out. "But everything is stable. The containment field is working exactly as the instructions said it would." The device lifted slightly off its base, floating in the air. The light it produced changed colors slowly, moving through every shade they could see, and some they had never seen before. "Look at the readings," Taiwan said excitedly. "The device is creating a microscopic space-time bubble. It's exactly like the theories about how our universe began." On screens around the world, scientists watched in amazement as the device showed them something impossible: the birth of a tiny universe. It was smaller than an atom, but contained everything needed for a universe to grow. "The window is opening," Heian said softly. Above the device, space itself seemed to bend. Through the distortion, they could see flashes of light and energy that looked like the pictures of deep space from the most powerful telescopes. "It's not just showing us a new universe," Jeho realized. "It's showing us our universe. We're looking back in time, seeing the moment everything began." The images change, showing them different moments in time. They saw galaxies being born, stars forming, and the first light of creation. The ancient civilization had given them a window into the greatest mystery of all. Their gift wasn't just the device, Do-hyun said, understanding at last. It was the knowledge that we're not alone, that other civilizations have asked the same questions we have. The device continued to work perfectly, recording everything it saw. In universities and research centers around the world, scientists began studying the data. Every minute brought new discoveries about how the universe worked. "We did it," Heian said, looking at the beautiful machine they had built. "We actually did it." But even as they celebrated, Jeho noticed something in the data stream. Something unexpected. Something that would change their understanding of reality even more than they had imagined. 1 year after they activated the device, Jeho stood at a podium in Seoul. Behind him, a large screen showed live images from the new International Universe Research Center. Heian sat in the front row, smiling proudly. "Today, we share our discoveries with everyone," Jeho began. The room was full of scientists, reporters, and students from around the world. What we learned changed everything we thought we knew about our universe. The screen showed the device, now housed in a special chamber at the research center. It still glowed with that strange, beautiful light. But now, they understood what it was showing them. Our universe is not alone, Jaiho explained. It is one of many. Like trees in a forest, universes grow, live, and create new universes. The civilization that left us the artifacts came from one of these other universes. They found a way to travel between them. Hei-yun joined him at the podium. We learned that the Big Bang wasn't the beginning, she said. It was more like a seed growing into a tree. Our universe grew from another, older universe, and someday, new universes will grow from ours. In the research center, Yoon-hee and Taiwan worked with scientists from every country. They had learned to use the device safely, studying the birth of tiny universe bubbles that lasted just seconds. Each experiment taught them more about how everything began. Do-hyun had changed too. His organization now helped protect and share the knowledge they gained. He understood that some discoveries were too important to keep secret. The ancient civilization left us more than just the device, Sang-min explained to the audience. They left us hope. Hope that life and intelligence can survive even when universes end. They showed us that knowledge can pass from one universe to the next. The screen showed their newest discovery, signs of other civilizations out there, also studying the space between universes. They weren't alone in their search for understanding. We are starting a new project, Jaiho announced. Following the instructions left in the artifacts, we will build a larger device, one that can send messages to other universes, just like the civilization that contacted us. He showed pictures of the new facility being built. It would be the largest scientific project in human history. Scientists from every country would work there, learning and sharing what they discovered. But our most important discovery wasn't about physics or universes, Hei-hyun said. It was about ourselves. When we worked together, when we shared knowledge instead of hiding it, we achieved something amazing. We took our first steps into a much larger reality. The audience stood and applauded. In the years that followed, the device would lead to more discoveries. Humans would learn to create tiny universes of their own, each one a new experiment in creation. They would find ways to send messages across the boundary between universes, joining a conversation that had been going on for longer than they could imagine. And somewhere, in another universe, another civilization would find their message, just as they had found the message left for them. The chain of knowledge would continue, passing from universe to universe, growing like branches on an infinite tree of creation. Jaiho looked out at the young scientists in the audience. Their faces were full of wonder and excitement. They would be the ones to continue this journey, to make the next great discoveries. The gift of knowledge would pass to them, and through them, to the future. The device glowed softly in its chamber, still showing them new wonders every day. Above it, the words of the ancient civilization had been carved in every human language. To those who seek understanding, the universe is larger than you imagine, and you are not alone.